Okay, we're going to talk about the cloud. Cloud computing is something that is picking up pace, even in Germany, where it has its own particular issues with putting data beyond the confines of a data center, all of this Datenschutz. We find that generally around the world, everything is moving to the cloud. Everything is going self-service. The kind of technicians that you needed to keep a system running kind of get in the way. You know, people want to have access to their data and to work with their data without having to be nice to a database administrator who can provide the data for them. And governance is becoming shared. And if IT teams can't keep pace with this changing requirement, and neither should they. This is something that Talend and Snowflake are particularly keen on. I'm going to talk first about my product. I'm going to talk about Snowflake. Snowflake is a data warehouse built for the cloud, which, as you heard from my previous talk, is a good thing. You need to build these things from scratch to take advantage of the particular advantages you get from the cloud. It's a SQL database. It talks exactly the kind of SQL you would write against any other database technologies, even the ones that have been going for 40 years or so, whose architecture diagram doesn't fit onto a side of A4. It is zero management. Snowflake is a service that is run by Snowflake. All you have to do is to create tables, create database, fill your tables full of data, and then run queries against it. There is no maintenance involved. There is no requirement to have indexes. It's very open technology. It doesn't require a large team of people just to keep it working. Talk about all of your data in terms of the fact that in the cloud, storing data is a very cheap thing to do. It costs a few tens of dollars per terabyte per month to store data in the cloud. This is wildly different from the issue you have in a data center, where it can cost many thousand times more than that. So the technology you build in the cloud to take advantage of cheap data is very different from the kind of technology that's been built up to squeeze the best out of a limited amount of data on a data center. And also, we take in semi-structured data for like JSON, Parquet, Avro, etc., directly into the database, and you can query that directly from SQL rather than having to pre-process that data and have to impose an awful lot of schema at the time you bring the database in. If the form of the data changes, that can be a big issue. But with Snowflake, you bring it straight into the database. So it copes with a large variety of data as well as the volume of data. In terms of how much data you can put into a Snowflake database, there is no limit. Well, maybe there is a number of atoms in the universe that Amazon can use to build storage out of, but we know of no limit to how much data you can store in our service. And what we do, we separate the storage from the computation so that each user group, each kind of application can have its own pool of computation to work with the shared data. And that means that all users can use the data all at the same time without getting in each other's way. This is, again, another advantage you get from building a system from scratch to use the benefits of the cloud. And you only pay for what you use. The possibility is there in the cloud to have next to nothing running, and then suddenly everybody's trying to use the system. You can scale up the amount of storage, computation that's available within a few seconds. And when there's a rush, say on a Monday morning, many of our customers, everybody comes in on a Monday morning, starts using the system, and in normal systems, that would be a problem because there would be a rush and everybody would be queuing. But with Snowflake, you can simply scale up the amount of computation that's available on that Monday morning People use the system, and then you scale it back down again. And you only pay for what you use. We charge for our database by the second. So it's possible to very quickly spin something up, do some processing, and then shut it down. And you don't have to pay for all of that big processing for 24/7 across the week. Okay, and talking about, this is more a diagram to describe how you have these different pools of computation working with the data. So it's, in this case, I have a number of departments. So I'm gonna walk around a bit. These guys at the bottom, the data scientists, they often get told, you cannot run your queries during the day because there are finance users, for example, who are trying to get their reports run. And every time the data scientists start running their queries, those queries slow down. With this kind of model, these guys have got their own compute, these guys have got their own compute, and they don't get in each other's way. Data scientists can run whatever queries they like, whenever they like, and they don't upset anybody. The other people who often get in the way are people who are trying to load data, and we're going to talk about ETL and Talend later on. The issue here is that if you have a data loading process going on, this can often slow things down for the people who are trying to query the system. So traditionally, you get people having to load the data at quiet times. And you don't want to do that. You want to be continually throwing data into your system. And this is what Snowflake can do. It can give you the ability to have all of your users running all of their processes anytime they want without getting in the way of the other users. So in overview, people like Snowflake because of the performance. It's possible to scale up performance to an incredible amount. You can just keep on adding computation because this is the cloud. You're not restricted to a certain number of processors or a certain size of machine. You can just keep on scaling up. Concurrency, I talk about people being able to run lots of queries at the same time without getting in each other's way. That's also something that our customers appreciate. And then again, the simplicity. I've talked about really quite a complex, it looks kind of complex on my previous diagram, but to an end user, we run this as a service and we manage this as a service. And all users have to do is to point their data in the correct direction and just use the database without having to maintain it. But this is absolutely nothing unless we can get some data into this database for us to do this, this fancy processing. And this is where Talend comes in. I'm going to pass the mic to Angelo, who can talk more about how you... Hey, we've got a mic each.
Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, hey, that's high value.
Thank you, Graham.
All right.
So, good morning, everybody. So, first of all, as Jesse said, my name is Angelo Sebastianelli. As my name and my accent will tell you probably, I'm Italian. So if you come to our booth after that, we have an Ask Me Anything session. Don't talk about soccer, okay? That's fine, okay. So before starting, I just want to know, so I'm pre-sales, working with Talend, just to have an idea what you do. So how many of you work with MapReduce or Spark or are data scientists, more or less? And you code that, or would you use Python, or what kind of language, or do you use any other tool? Probably you code that. Okay. So let's start. So as Graham said, in the last few years, or the last few months, we have seen tremendous changes in technology. We went from MapReduce to Spark. We are different vendor now in the cloud. A few years ago, we had just Amazon. Now we have Google. We have Microsoft, and so on. So the main issues that we are seeing in our engagement basically are basically two. One is that the company, they are struggling, scaling, or changing or replatforming every 2-3 years, because yesterday they had something and tomorrow they want to go from MapReduce to Spark or try to use Snowflake. And the second one, of course, is the let's say the lack of skills, because of course if you are a developer, you need to learn MapReduce, then you need to learn the Spark, then you need to know how to talk with Snowflake, for instance. So our idea is that in order to be a really data-driven company, as most of the CTO, CDO, CIO want to be or try to be, you need to, how to go faster? Okay. So you need to be able to harness the data from different data sources, and you need to do that as quick as possible. You can not wait to your developer to learn the API and start working with them. And this is just few of them. If you see the big data landscape today, we have, I think, something like 2,000 different applications and data sources. So you have two options. One, you have a lot of developers try to learn the new technology, or you can use just one platform that, with a single platform, will allow you to talk with different platforms at the same time. At the same time, you can, basically with this single platform, you can profile, cleanse, aggregate, or whatever you want to do with your data. So that's the first thing you should be able to do. The second thing is, next year will be the year of the GDPR regulation in Europe, so you need to be pretty safe about your data. So with so many new data sources, we will have also a lot of new people want to talk with this data, use this data. But because of the GDPR, so you need to have some kind of governance, actually pretty straight governance, because there are different data, and this data you have to be safe about that. You have to safeguard this data, like social security number, for instance, in the US, but also IP address, location, and so on. So you need some kind of governance, and that's what we offer, for instance. And this has to be used through the entire data integration process. At the same time, Graham talked about a lot of new data. So a lot of new data is good. A lot of people say, hey, okay, we have a lot of information, but you need to have some kind of way to format this data, to cleanse this data, because otherwise you just have garbage. And as we usually say in the old world, master data management or database, you will have just garbage in and then you will have garbage out. You can create the best dashboard, best web service, the best data integration, but the information you are able to, or the insight you are able to take from this data is basically garbage at the end. So you need some kind of tool that will allow you to cleanse this data, to integrate this data, to harvest also the metadata of this data. But the problem usually for us is not changes in technology. That's usually just a matter of budget or money. So the main problem is to change people's minds, so to change the role of the people. So in the last few years, we have seen a lot of new roles. I was reading something about how many data analysts we will have in the US next year, something like 6 million of data analysts. So you will have to help these people, because these people, they usually spend something between 60% and 80% of their time just trying to cleanse this data, or try to access this data, because the IT has to provide them the data. So one thing that we think is quite important right away is you need to give some kind of data self-service data services, or the ability to these people to enrich this data by their own without waiting for the IT to give them the data. So that's what we do basically. So we have one platform that gives you the ability to run either on Azure or Google Cloud, on-premise or Amazon. At the same time, we can work with Cloudera, all the other vendors, and of course we can work with Snowflake. We will have kind of demo later on, and we'll show you how we do that quite easily. So that's what are the challenges, basically, and I will just show you in one slide why we think we can solve that and what are the way we solve that. So we have the one platform. It's called Data Fabric that can be used for different use cases like standard data integration, big data integration, machine learning, cloud integration. If you have any question, you can ask now. Otherwise, I am downstairs in my booth with Kram. You can come there and we'll have